What is it that us artists have in common? Well, we're here to find out. This is Red and Yellow Make Ginger. Hello and welcome to another episode of Red and Yellow Make Ginger. But we met through the Dreams Are Real, but we've been keeping in touch outside of that since then. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Chris. It's always fun to chat with you, and you and I have so many. We were just talking about tangents, and you and I can go on different tangents a lot, so that's fun.
Yeah, we're sort of saying we'll try and bring it to creativity, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, what really got me thinking you'd be good on the podcast was the book, because that's been your main, it's become quite popular, hasn't it? I think it's been talked about a lot, and
probably by me.
Maybe, but yeah, it's nice to be an author, and I wanted to know about the writing process, because you got a publisher involved, didn't you? So was that like a...
Yes.
So how did that process go down?
My book, I actually have hardcover and softcover. What Should Dragon Do? So it's a story of a character named Dragon, and she lives with her two bear friends, so her two roommates. And there's three situations in there that are like just small things. And Dragon gets very triggered, gets very angry, and she reacts in anger. And so then after the situation is explained, then the question is asked, what should Dragon do? Could she have responded in a kinder way? A little thing for children to explain how we can, even when we're angry or things are bothering us, we can respond in kindness. These are stories. I lived with roommates when I lived in Toronto, and I would tell my friends some of the stories and they would just laugh. They're like, that's hilarious. And it's funny after it happens, but it's not funny when it happens at the time. And I thought, oh my goodness, everyone's laughing at these stories. I should write a book. And I was going to write just a book about roommates and the adult situations. But then I'm thinking, well, I don't know how that works. And it gets a little bit tricky. And I thought, well, that would make a good children's story. And it also explains how you can, they're funny, but it also explains how you can, it's like a teaching for children, a lesson for children, and how you can respond with kindness. So I wrote that in 2020 when we were all locked down during the pandemic.
It seems like a lot of people's stories are, well, it started in pandemic.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Well, same with YouTube for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we were all just thinking of what can we do? How can we be creative? And then online, there was so much more. That's when I found out about Zoom. It was in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, what happened to Skype? They should be the sponsor of the pandemic, really. Poor Skype.
Although Skype is tricky because you have to have a person's name.
Exactly. That's why Zoom
is just like, here's a link. So I remember researching it. How do I publish? And there were so many different... That's the thing about going online. It's great for all the information, but you can get overwhelmed so easily, right?
Yes.
And then, of course, as soon as you Google something, Facebook ad pops up about some sort of course or webinar. And so I attended a lot of those different things, and I got overwhelmed. I was looking for publishers who would also print, because some people will publish it but won't actually print out the books. So I found one actually out in BC. I'm in Canada, called Freeze and Press, and you pay for them to self-publish. There's like a round of editing. I have the graphics already, and so they formatted it for me because I have no idea how that works.
Okay, so the graphics and the art, you'd already had those?
Yeah, I actually found somebody through Fiverr. It was a person whose Fiverr handle was Kids Art. And they were out of Pakistan. And I asked if I could have a real name to put on the book, but they're like, just use Kids Art.
Yeah.
They were fantastic. The drawings are so cute and colorful.
Well, it's perfect for the book.
Yeah. And they were such a pleasure to work with. Anytime I went back for I need it formatted differently, or it was bleeding on the page, or I didn't understand any of the language, and they accommodated me, and they were just very great. So if you ever need pictures, well, go to Chris. Or this was
Well, that's why I'm
computer.
asking. 'Cause I'm interested in the process because I know exactly how it, the complications of books and album covers, and so it sounds like they really talked you through it and they did a fantastic job with it.
Yeah, and this is more like computer graphics, whereas or do you do computer
I
graphics
do
as
just
well?
I do digital, but I make it look like it's done in a traditional way. So I build up
Um,
layers, and it's something I've recently got into because I couldn't afford an iPad for ages. I saved up for it. Parents helped me with the rest of the money, and it's really helped the workflow. But years ago, to be able to draw on a screen, it'll be a lot more. So I didn't have access to it. So it's quite new for me.
mm, yeah, there's a lot of with technology and everything. There's so much more to learn.
Yeah, it's definitely
Um,
changed a lot, and it's more accessible than it used to be. It's still a lot of money, but it's not like it would have been free 4 times the price. If you went back 5 years ago, even I think.
so yeah, they were at Freeze and Press. They were very helpful. I had such a great experience. I had so many questions, and you could have phone chats with them and email with them, and you could also pay for different things. Like I paid for extra an hour of marketing advice, and they set up a website for me. So it kind of the amount of money I paid kind of grew as I added more things for help. But because I was so new, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd rather go to a professional. Yeah, it was just a really great experience. So anyone looking to self-publish, Freeze and Press, and they also give you the ISBN code. You know that
Yeah,
code?
yes,
Yeah.
they sort all that out.
Because I remember looking into that and I was like, oh my goodness, how do I do
Oh,
this? You have to go to the government. And they did that for me. They put it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble in the States. And here in Canada, we have Indigo and Chapters, and they put that on through them on their websites. So, like, it's not in the stores, but you can go to their websites and order it through them. And they did all that because I would have had no idea how to go about doing that.
yeah, it's a bit of a minefield. I'm writing an art book at the moment, and well, I have been for the last 2 years because I'm dyslexic, and they're small chapters, but it takes a while for me. And I'm doing it for Blurb, which is a dropship thing, but it's nice to be able to have people working with you and have the books in your hands, and there's many different ways of self-publishing, and you just got to choose the right one for you.
Yeah.
I was also interested in your writing process, how you took your stories and then got into the writing, because I have read the book, so I did read that
Oh,
over the weekend. So it's like a professional children's book. It's there. So yeah, did that take a while
oh,
to get the words formatted and to get it into how you wanted? The font's nice too, but the actual way you've written it, and or was it one of those moments where it just worked? It just flash.
it just kind of I wrote it in like 2 days, I think, and it was just really it just flowed. And I remember thinking, oh, with books, it just you have to take months and all of these things because people will say, and some of them do, or it's like with songwriters, right? Where some of
Yeah.
them say, oh, I wrote this in an hour, and some songs will take people months. And so I was just in the flow and I just wrote the story. And then I thought, oh, I should add like a little thing about a lesson on how you can go about changing your attitude. Oh, that would be good. Because at the time I was also starting to learn personal development and learning about attitude. So I thought, hey, that would be a great teaching tool.
Mm.
So yeah, I actually wrote it pretty quickly. And then when I sent it to Freeze and Press and their editors adjusted some things,
Mm-hmm.
but which was very helpful because I'm like, is this okay? Is this for like a good wording for children? Like I had no idea. So they were very helpful in that process. But yeah, and I think it was just easier for me than writing if I were to have written it as an adult
Yeah.
with stories, because you would have had to kind of go into a lot more detail. And that I think that's why I kind of thought it would fit better with a children's book as well. I kind of write, I'm not very, when I write, I guess I feel like I'm juvenile in my writing. I don't know. Maybe I'm not. It's
Well, it helps you connect to the children though in that respect.
yeah.
So
And I
in
like
a sense,
simple. I don't like it super complicated. And if I read a book that has all these big fancy words, I get bored so quickly because I have to look up in the dictionary all
um,
the time.
yeah, it reminds me of the book. It's for adults, but the book Cloud Atlas, where every other word, and my vocabulary is quite large, but yeah, every other word I'm looking up, okay, oh yeah, that fits in that sentence, that works. You use it correctly, but yeah, it meant I didn't get past the first 4 pages, I think. So yeah, but
That's when I
then
watched the movie.
yeah, the movie's pretty good. But for children's books, it is different because you're thinking like, what age range are you aiming for, and what their vocabulary will be at that age, and can you use a word that's a bit more complicated but still simple enough that it makes sense. So yeah, there's a lot of things
Yeah.
to consider, I guess, and I guess
Yeah.
they had a whole team, or at least someone that could advise you on that.
Yeah. I actually asked them, I said, I think this is for ages like 5, or you could read it to your kids at bedtime. And so there was different age groups. So they said, yeah, this would be 3 to 6. Although I have some friends who have an 8-year-old and she loved the book. So I think the lessons in it can help even adults, right?
Yeah,
We read that and
yeah,
we're, oh, my
exactly. Yeah.
attitude. Oops. But, and I had some of my adult friends and they laughed so hard through the thing. And so they found it amusing too. But it's also something you can read to your kids at bedtime if
Yeah.
they can't read yet. And I kind of wanted to be, I loved the Berenstain Bears when I was growing up.
Well, I've not actually heard of that one.
The Berenstain
Maybe
Bears?
maybe it's a Canada USA thing. It hasn't reached.
Maybe. I thought it was
We had
worldwide.
we had the Care Bears, so
Okay, well, the Berenstain Bears was a family of 4. So it's Mama, Papa, baby, and the girl and the boy. I can't remember their names.
how's it? How's it spelled? I might.
There's this thing about the
I'm guessing.
Berenstain Bears being spelled EI or AI. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, because quite often I watch the podcast back and go, "Oh, I have seen it."
They live in a tree house, and it's just stories of them, like brother gets mad at sister and how did they resolve their fight and stuff like that. And those were my favorite when I was a kid. So I wanted it to be kind of like that genre, that age group with a good lesson in it.
Yeah, it's certainly got that, but it's also could be a lot of debate there with like, you know, especially the last one, because there's a story around Dragon getting lost, and should the friends have helped? So there could be a lot of debate around. So there are layers to it, I think, where for older kids you can go, "But what would you have done?" So
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about that story. Because I was like, should I include this story? But I think, and I did put, if Dragon had really needed help, they would have gone to get her, but they had already told her, and she was able to go and get help herself, and they wanted to.
Yes, it's empowering Dragon to
rather than just picking you up and doing everything for you. And with the kind of person that Dragon was, she was like an adult child, and so everything had been done for her, and she just didn't want to do things for herself. And so it's hard living with a person like that. But yeah, I mean, you're totally right. They could be up for debate. Like, they should have just gone pick her up.
It does open up, debate on what is the nice thing to do, what is the correct thing to do, and taking that pause and having patience and not reacting in the fiery anger like a dragon. It's a very good metaphor, having the dragon be the fiery, angry.
Yeah. Well, and I was kind of thinking, well, if you start pulling back the layers of why people are triggered, there's reasons. So obviously Dragon has a lot of issues. But this is a children's book. You don't want to get into, Dragon was hurt by her previous childhood and like the right?
Save that for the adult stories later.
Yeah. But I was then thinking, well, yeah, Dragon's triggered and she hasn't been able to learn how to emotionally regulate. But yeah, that's more adult talk.
But still happy with the nice illustrations. That could be quite fun.
Yeah.
Having kids' illustrations by an adult story.
Yeah.
So did you have much say in which illustrations would be used for what? And did the illustrator have their own ideas, and how that sort of conversation go?
So I sent them my story and I told them what I was looking for. I was looking for, I went on Fiverr and found pictures from what the person had done previously. I was like, oh, I really like their colors and how they did this. And so I said, can you make Dragon like this and the bears like this? But I didn't care what kind of bears they were. So Kids Art created like the panda bear and the brown bear. And I was like, okay, cool. Because I didn't specify. I just said they were two bears. And so I sent them my story and I said, I want pictures for this and this and this. And then they did that and they sent it to me and they're like, is this okay? Do you like this? And I was like, yeah, these are fantastic. So I actually didn't need anything further except when it came to like sending it to the publisher and they said, well, something is bleeding into this and for this size of paper and all that stuff I didn't understand. That was the only time I needed to go back.
They tried teaching us that a lot in university, but I didn't learn that pretty much till after the fact when I needed to know it.
Oh.
Yeah, unless you get to a situation where you need it, you don't. Yeah, it takes a while for that to click, I think. So for them to try and explain bleed to someone who hasn't ever dealt with it, it takes a little while, well, years in my case, for it to actually the penny to drop and go, that's why we use it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it was like a new language to me. So I just copied and pasted from the publisher and said, I was like, I hope you understand this because I'm sorry, I don't get any of it. And they did. So that was great. But yeah, they said, if you need to change anything, and I had time to change or say, oh, I don't like this picture or anything, but I was very happy with the work that they did. So.
And did they send you like a sample before they did the whole?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like
2 years,
3 years ago. I forget.
Mm.
I think they sent me a sample of the characters at first, and then I was like, yeah, those are so cute.
Nice.
Oh, but I wanted to tell you, I actually did try to go through publishers. So because I want, if the dream is to publish with a publisher who does everything for you and you don't have to pay and you get all famous and rich. I know that's very, very
they give you an advance.
Hard. Yeah. I mean, but it's even harder to get into those because obviously they get so many people and then.
Yeah, and you hear about all the famous stories of most famous authors where they got rejected for years and years and hundreds of manuscripts and then that one person who decided to give them the chance and take them on. Yeah. It's quite a few stories like that.
So I went through, I think I sent about 50 because you have to go online and fill out this form and explain what your book is about and what books it's similar to. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't really know any kids' books out there. So I had to look up all these different things.
Especially now.
And it was very just too similar to what they had already done, or some of them weren't open to accepting new manuscripts because they had so many. So I just got so many rejections and I thought, well, I could always self-publish. And so that's the area I went into then.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for self-publishing. I mean, my friend who I had on the podcast for episode 2, he self-published a lot of books and puts on Amazon and he's been in the top 10 a few times. So yeah, it's worth.
Awesome.
Well, I think every book's been in the top 10 actually. I don't know how many have been in number 1, but it's been. But the point being is, there are ways of trying your own route and getting past the gatekeepers, as it were, and blazing your own trail. And yeah,
the gatekeepers. That's so true, eh? Like we have so many more ways of doing things ourselves now, which is exciting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I am kind of quoting the Rogue Artist Survival Guide by Ralph Perez, so I better say that so it's in the podcast. But yeah, they've got an amazing YouTube channel, and I'll link that down below. But yeah, they talk a lot about mindset and that sort of stuff, and finding your own way. And so,
oh my gosh, mindset is so important. And I don't know about you, but I grew up with a very negative mindset and I didn't think I could do anything. I thought I was worthless. And so that's why the personal development for me has been so huge. And it's given me so much hope. Like I want to live my life. Whereas before I didn't care if I used to live in Toronto and I was like, I don't know, if I fall into those subway tracks and get killed, well, whatever. Because my life was miserable. I was working at a bank and I was not cut out for it. And so I was just surviving day by day, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said for the 9 to 5 and being a cog in the system. And for us creative people, that's not I mean, you can go down the whole route of everyone's got to work, but actually it can really damage your health if you're not sort of geared up to it. And it's not just a fact that we don't want to. It's the fact that sometimes we can't because our health gets in the way, or mental health or physical health. So
Yeah, and my brain just didn't work like that. And I was always it took me 6 years to finally be up to code with my stats and everything. I worked at a phone channel, and so many other people, they were business minded, they were into accounting, they were into math and all that stuff. And I'm like, I don't really like any of this. I just kind of got the job at the bank and just kind of moved to different positions. And then, you're always trying to find your fit.
yeah,
And then when I left there, and I had actually suffered CPTSD for years. Although I'm not diagnosed. I kind of diagnosed myself, but I don't know how else to describe it. But you're always, like, every day you're surviving. You're always on an anxiety level.
I get that.
You're always panicking. Like,
Yeah.
I was always in this state of freezing, and so I would just break down every day, mostly every day. And I always got in trouble at work. Like, why are you breaking down? What's wrong with you? And then when I started to work on my mental health and personal development, and I understood so much of actual trauma that I went through in my childhood, when, before you're like, I had a good childhood. And then you see everything that has affected you. And you're like, we all go through trauma, right?
Yeah.
And we all trying to cope with those previous things. So I was just messing my life up more by coping in negative ways, in unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
And
I mean, my story is that I had a very good upbringing, but then because my health was so bad in childhood, that in itself gave me trauma because of not being able to socialize with other kids and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, and then when I took flash forward many years later, when I'm in university and I just graduated and I went away from art because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and the deadlines were such a stress. And during that time, I qualified as a sports massage therapist, did that for a while, but I wasn't getting the hours, and it's quite a physical job. So sometimes I'd be aching and trying to get through the last two massages, thinking, yeah, this is stupid. I'm helping other people get through their aches and pains, and yet I'm really hurting my own body doing this. And so when I moved into support work to get more money and things, and then my mental health went downhill, that's when I returned to art. So, and yes, I've got less money now, and etc. etc. Not to go into it too much, but things are starting to get noticed now, and it takes a long time, especially in the art world, to to get things out there and to get things moving. So yeah, I can certainly, it's different, but I can certainly relate to a lot of what you said. So yeah.
Well, and art is your type of therapy as well, right? Like, you
certainly that's how it begins. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what they say with actually, I was talking to one of the women from our group, Lisanne, and she was asking me about, do you meditate? And I said, I've tried.
Yep.
It's really hard with my brain always. She goes, you can do different ways of meditating, like drawing, coloring, those things with the sand.
Oh, yeah, the Japanese Zen gardens.
Yeah. And I started doing puzzles recently, and I find that kind of meditative. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's different ways of doing that. And I used to do crafts, paint little boxes and things. And I got tendonitis, so I couldn't do that really. But I found it so relaxing and fun. And so I'm like, oh yeah.
I think it's kind of anything tactile. Sometimes I just feel this need to create something, and just something hands-on. Just, it can feel a bit like a curse sometimes when your brain's just going, don't relax, do some art, and yeah, you have to do something. I mean, pretty much like yesterday, where I just put a video on the art channel because I had to create something. The video's not that, it's okay, it's not my usual standard, but I just needed to create something. It's weird like that, because I was going to ask if you do any other creative stuff now, or whether
oh, sorry,
whether
I get ahead of people sometimes.
No, that's good, because what I was interested in is going from that. These stories kind of just came to you at that moment, thinking there's a gap for a gap in the market. There's a need for this. Has that happened before or since that happened? Or is that just a real sort of what I call connecting to the channel of whatever this muse is, and it just being there and needing to be said and written?
I get a lot of ideas. I'm more like, I get ideas and I kind of start, but I have a hard time following through and finishing.
Yeah.
but I used to think all my ideas were stupid because I didn't believe in myself. And I thought, well, I thought I was worthless. And so I remember in 2020 when I was going through listening to a lot of personal development stuff, and there was one guy, Paul Martinelli, and he said that creative idea, well, he probably didn't say, I mean, these ideas are out there also, but I heard it from him. Creative ideas come from above.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you believe in God, God's giving you these ideas, and we're creative beings. So go with your ideas, and they won't always turn out, they won't always come to fruition, but move in them.
Yeah.
And then you'll see, and you'll also see if that's the passion you have for them, if that continues to grow. And I was like, oh my goodness, that was just, it's so simple. And yet for me, I didn't really think of it like that. So when I have ideas, especially if they're things that continuously come up for me, and I know Wayne Dyer talks about that. He's like, that is what you were meant to do. If that is something that, especially if it's a lifelong thing for 20 years or so, right? You're just keeps coming back to this. It keeps coming back to this. That's what you're meant to do. And if we're not following through on our ideas, then we're not being our truest selves. And also maybe our ideas are there to help others. And so we're not helping others if we don't start with those things. And it's scary as hell. Like, I remember starting my podcast and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm terrified to talk and have people hear my thoughts. And but it helped me to speak better and think better and hear myself and go, oops, I'm going off on tangents here.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that stage of the podcast. But
but the more you do it, then the better you get.
Yeah,
and now I'm not scared of it at all. And it's helped me meet so many amazing people. I was terrified of it and I didn't almost do it, but then I was like, no, I'm going to do it. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it definitely does. And what I was thinking is with the Muse idea, with the channel from either God or I think the artist Way calls it the Great Creator or the Creative Creator or something. But sometimes that might be step one. It might be saying, no, it's not the whole idea yet. Just do the thing I'm giving you, and then more will be revealed. Because I find when I work through an idea, if I put it in the sketchbook, in my case, or however you want to explore that idea, that's when more gets unlocked and you get through that block. Sometimes that is just step one.
Yes. I think it was Billie Eilish. She was on the podcast, the Office Ladies podcast, because her favorite show is The Office, the American version.
Yeah, I saw her get interviewed by one of the Office people.
Sorry?
I saw her get interviewed by one of the American Office people.
Oh!
I can't remember his name now, but quite well known.
So she was saying that I don't know if she types it out or she just records it into her phone, but all of the ideas that she comes up with, she always puts them down. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is so fantastic. And I need to do that because I find when I go for a walk, I have so many thoughts and ideas that come up. Oh, I should write that down. And then when I get home, I forget. And so I'm like, damn it, that was hard.
I always trying to get one of those really thin notebooks or thin sketchbooks and always have it on me. There's days I forget, but yeah, you never know when an idea may find you, and you just need to quickly jot it down, or do a little doodle, or anything to drop the memory down. And
yeah. Or I have ideas for a podcast, and think, oh, I'm going to say this, and then I don't. Because you don't always have the time to do a podcast in that moment, right? I think, oh, I could have, if I'm out and I think, oh, I have this all in my head right now, I should say it, but I'm not home and I can't record it right now. So that's the tricky part too. So maybe I should just record on my phone and then.
There's many times where I can't paint the thing, but I can at least scribble or write the thing down. But yeah, the idea does get lost a little bit because I don't often have a full paint studio on me at all times.
Right.
I try and carry my rucksack around with me all the time, but sometimes you can't stop for an hour or two to do the thing. So it's finding ways, isn't it, to shorthand it for later so you can unpack it. And so I guess with the podcast, it is recording a voice note, or it's putting a few bullet points down that not maybe four questions, but things that can help with the rejigging the memory. And yeah.
I really love the painting behind you there with
Oh, which one?
the behind your shoulder on the other side.
This one?
Yeah, with the teal colors.
You mean the throw that I put over my TV, probably? I can't point the right way.
It's got a pink thing in the middle. Pink and there's it looks like bunny ears.
Yeah, I think so that one.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, that's what I use for my art trails and things. So it's not actually mine. It's like a tapestry that I got
Oh,
online. But what it does is it really plays off my paint colors.
I love those colors. Those are like my favorite colors.
Yeah, so they're all the colors that I use in my artwork. So when I have all my art displayed, it really plays off of that. I can't for the life of me remember who designed it or whatever. I think I just found it. I think I just found it on eBay actually. I don't think it has an actual artist a name. I feel so bad when I can't find the designer. But
right.
Yeah. If I do find it in the meantime, I will put it in the description for people to have a look. And
Okay.
it just really helps with connecting to the other colours in my artworks, and rather than just have a plain table.
Right.
But I also thought it's good for the TV because it means you don't get reflections, and yeah.
True.
Because my studio's in my living room, and then the podcast equipment's in my living room, and then everything's in one room, and then I've just got one extra room to sleep in, and that's it. So I have to make do.
Do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
Well, I admire you so much, Chris. All the like your passion for your art, and then all these things that you're doing, the YouTube channels, the podcast, you're living your dream. And that's so scary for many people, right? Like when I worked at the bank, many of us are miserable. Many people don't really, some people, they enjoy that, but most of us were just there and we're miserable. But well, it's a safe, I have a paycheck, I have benefits, I have a pension. And that's what's kept me stuck for so long too, because, well, this is life and we just have to. But after a while, I'm thinking if I was still there, I'm much happier. 3 years ago, I left and I'm much happier not being there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
I guess this life kind of happened by default in a way, in that, well, I had a breakdown in 2017, and then that led to the government sort of funding me to be unwell with my mental health. And then as I got a bit better, I was able to do things with purpose. And then you kind of just hope and pray that the finances will catch up at some point. But it gives me something to do. It's only a few hours a week. It's not like crazy 40 hours a week like I was doing. So yeah, it means that it's basically the same equivalent as me volunteering in the charity shop and things, but I'd much rather do this. So yeah, it just gives me purpose. And I could have never envisioned that I would be on YouTube. I was terrified of video when I first started, and
right. Me too.
Yeah, absolutely terrified. And I found that I enjoyed it though, and that enjoyment and passion for the art kind of overruled the fear of it all. And then the more I did it, the more it became normal, and the fear was less. And then I've still got room for improvement, but as I got to speak better and connect to people easier, still work in progress, it meant that the podcast was more of a viable option, even though I still interrupt people, I still talk too much and don't let the guests talk more. But we've talked long enough that we can have that back and forth, and it's okay.
And we still interrupt each other.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I do it too. I that's what I noticed on my podcast too. And I would or I'd start talking about myself, or because it would remind me of a story.
Yeah.
If I was interviewing somebody and then I was like, oh my gosh, is that bad? Because some people think, oh, you don't always bring back to a story, but then other people know or are saying it helps to relate to you. And also it helps you to understand other people and then say, yeah, I experienced that as well. So it's not always, but I did that with my podcast. I was like, oh, no, I was always examining everything I said.
Yeah, I think there is an ADHD meme which says the balance between relating it to yourself, so it's relatable, and not making it about yourself. So it's such a fine balance. And
yes. But then when you're aware of it, you can start working on it.
Yeah.
And even with the I say like a lot, but also that's our generation. We, you know, I saw the news the other day, and there was these girls at university now or high school, and they kept saying like, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm not as bad. I don't say it as much, but you start to understand what you say, and then okay, instead of saying take a pause. And so doing the podcast will help you to, especially if you listen back to yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there are words that we use, and I use a lot of so and because I used to have a stutter as a teenager, and I'm still using occasionally those running words to get me into the conversation, and now I can edit them out. So and then it sounds so much more direct and positive, and not questioning myself, just taking out the first 2 or 3 words. It's amazing how just doing that makes you sound so much more of a confident person.
Yeah. Or I have some friends. I have some friends in podcasting, and they said they're like, just leave it all in. They say I don't edit because it's just, this is real, this is raw, and I admire that because I was editing out a lot of me. But I also know people can't stand the ums and the likes. So, but you can't please everybody either. So
I leave some in so it seems real. I make a sort of calculated choice of what should have an in and what shouldn't.
Right.
So yeah, it seems to work, because otherwise it seems too polished, too smooth, and
true.
But then other times when someone starts a sentence, because it's more when guests aren't sure of how the podcast works, and then they start a sentence, explain what they've just said, and then go, was that okay? Oh yeah, carry on. And then carry on, and then I just cut that bit out in the middle, and it sounds like really good.
Yeah.
But the thing which was interesting is when you're having a conversation, your brain can interpret it and hear it, but when it's a recording, it's like, oh, you have to really listen now. So it's funny how that works.
Listening back, I had a lot of therapists, life coaches, authors on my podcast, the Stuff Up podcast, by the way. I should say that. And sometimes they would say stuff I was just learning for the first time. So I think, oh, I don't know what to say, or what? And then listening back, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to get it now. And there was a guy I had, his name's Harry Turner, and he calls himself the nocturnal therapist. And I wrote to him recently, we had another chat just last month. And I said to him, you were so mind-blowing on my podcast. I wasn't really fully understanding everything you were saying. But I said, as I've started to learn more, I always think back to what you said. And I'm like, oh, this is what Harry was talking about. So it was just, and that's why I love doing the podcast. And it gets kind of stressful with the interviews because you have to research the people and read their books and listen to their podcasts and whatever. If you want to do that, not everyone does that.
Yeah, I do a bit, but it's very much the minimum of.
Yeah, it's too overwhelming.
It's more. I choose a guest when I've got maybe set 2 or 3 questions in my head already, and then I just let the rest flow.
That's good, because then you're not stressed. Like I stressed way too much over it, which is why I took a break. But just it's so great learning from other people and just having these conversations. And so yeah, that's what's so much fun about that stuff, right?
Yeah. Do you think you'll go back to the podcast at some point when you've had enough of a break and you've sort of settled into?
It's been a year now. I think actually the end of last April I stopped, and I have a friend who's like, promise me you'll get back on the mic. And I said, you know what? I have an idea for maybe a limited series or something of me getting in front of the mic and talking about things that I've learned.
Yeah.
Because I have so much to say. And I don't know if I'll ever get back to the interviews, or that will just take me a little bit more time, because I found I put so much pressure on myself as well.
I mean, maybe
finding people.
I mean, you don't have to go with this idea, but I suddenly thought maybe people can send you in and like a topic or an idea. And if it's something that you resonate with as well, you could have maybe people send in their questions and you could discuss it as a solo thing, but it's more like a community then, I guess. But it just suddenly came to me then that might be take the pressure off and it still be a bit interactive. But
yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, but then again, there are people who do solo podcasts, and they are very listenable. That's not really a word, but very.
It could be a word, maybe.
It's not a word. But you don't lose interest. There's some people who can do that, and I think you're probably one of them because of the tone of your voice and the way you have so much passion for these subjects.
Oh,
So
thank you.
you might find,
Sometimes I'm just like a jumble of words and I don't know what I'm saying. But I think those are the days when my brain is foggy.
well, it may sound like that to you, but then listening back, it probably
True.
sounds very articulate and very enthusiastic and passionate. But yeah, in the moment, maybe not for you.
Well, I can explain things to my mom that I've learned, and she goes, "Oh, you're so articulate," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's good." Yeah, I don't really know if I feel it all the time, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm exactly the same. I can be talking and not really understanding what I'm saying, even, and then I listen to it back and go, "Oh, I was all right there."
yeah, right. It's so funny how in that moment we think we're not making sense. Or I don't know if you do this. I know a lot of us women do this. We'll say something and then we'll say, "Does that make sense?" And people are like, "What? Stop asking that." And I'm thinking, "Oh, but I've been told I don't always make or maybe it's the ADHD. I've had friends who are like, "Why are you saying it like that? Don't say it like that." And although I don't think those are very helpful friends,
No,
and I
it
try not to
sounds
hang
like
around
it.
with those kind of people because if you don't understand it, you could say, "Can you explain it differently?" Or unclear. You don't have to say it so rudely. But I've had that before, and so I still question: Am I making sense
Mhm.
to
Yeah, I mean,
people?
it's so easy to go back to that one memory of when that happened and go
Yeah.
and questioning the rest of it rather than thinking about all the other times
Oh my
when.
gosh, yes. Oh, that's what's so fascinating about the memories and how we live today based on our previous experience and the memories of those. And then to change, to move forward, we have to rewire our brain and focus not on those memories or those feelings, but change it.
Yeah,
And when I learned that, I was like, "What? I
it's
didn't know that."
it's so weird which memories we choose to focus on as well. It's like, why am I remembering these memories when I've got a whole library full of other ones that I could go to that are more positive? It's such a weird, how that works. How we keep going back to the same memories all the time and sort of belittling ourselves over it and thinking why. But then it goes the other way where we have happy memories when we're thinking, but why those? Why those memories?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a whole ton of memories that I've long forgotten. Yeah, it's
It's
weird.
so bizarre. There's some memories I have and people are like, "Why would you remember that?" Like I said, well, during this one thing that we went to, we had this for dinner in grade 7. And my sister's like, "What?" But if she says, "Do you remember this other thing?" I'm like, "No." It was kind of like a bigger thing. So I have no idea where that comes from, but
I think these core memories, and I think they do feed into just a segue back in. They
yeah.
do kind of go into our creativity, into our writing, and into our artwork. I think so. We are kind of wired up for that in the sense of you can kind of try and get away from it, but if you follow that natural path of the memories we have, then I'm sure it does show up in all of our creative endeavors. I think. I don't know if you've had
Yeah.
that experience, but
And that's why everything we do, all of our creativity, I remember thinking, well, other people are doing that, but we are all unique. We're all
mm,
have our own story, and nobody has the same experience as you. So even if you think, oh, so many other people have written a book like this, or so many other people are doing art or
mm,
this, they're not you.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I remember when I heard that for the first time, it was so refreshing. It was so encouraging because it's like, oh, they're right. I have something to say. And even if somebody else is saying it, I can say it differently, or I've heard different things. So I can bring a different voice to it. And that person has theirs. And so that's why we shouldn't compare ourselves. I compared myself for years and it just made me miserable.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I mean,
yeah.
there are so many children book writers. There's so many people who do portraits or figures, but they're not you. So it's going to be different because I'm always fascinated by how I can only talk for myself in visual arts, but those artists, we could use the same reference and come up with a completely different artwork, and someone could be given the same brief for writing a story and come up with a completely different story.
And that's exciting. It's so exciting when instead of, everything was a competition, right? And I mean, there's that person who gets to be on top and win the prize, and that's fair. But at the same time, like I was never one who won anything. I was never the top of anything. So I thought, well, I'm not good at anything. I'm not this and that. It's not a competition in life.
No, and it
Like you
could
can
be,
still win at life and somebody else can win at life and we're doing different things. And that's how it should be. That's what
yeah,
we're all here for a purpose.
and it could be a collaboration. You never know when that person at the top might be a colleague on some project sometime and might help you up a bit. So
Yeah.
it's not that you're in competition with them. It's just they could be another network or another connection, or there's many. I think we're in collaboration with each other, and you do get to know who you want to work with, of course. But it's not a competition. There's people out there who may want to collaborate with you later. So I always try and connect with people. I mean, I like connecting with people anyway. That's why I started the podcast, and that's why thoroughly enjoying it. I do get a little bit nervous for the first 2 minutes, just when we're waiting for the screen to flash on. I mean,
I
not so much with you, because we talked many times before, but with others, if you haven't talked before, waiting for them to suddenly appear on screen.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know. I was always right before I would do an interview. I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. And I'd have to talk myself up. Yes, you want to do this. Yes, it's going to be fun. But there's that panicky moment, right?
Just for
Because
the
you're,
first 2 minutes, once you got talking and you've got over the
yeah,
initial small talk at the beginning, which you can either just choose to keep in or cut out. I often keep it in because it's just that sort of. But yeah, once you get over that and you're in the flow of it, you're fine. But yeah, the initial 2 minutes, just trying to introduce yourself and get into podcast mode, and it can be a little bit nerve wracking sometimes.
yeah.
Just for 2 to 5 minutes, nothing major, but and I thoroughly enjoy it after that. But yeah, it's just I think it's also being on Zoom, having someone just suddenly appear is, yeah,
Yeah. Totally. Or just getting your vibe. I mean, I had, when you talk, sometimes you're concerned if some people are going to be very easy to talk to, or
yeah,
is it going to feel like it's pulling teeth?
yeah. I find I tend to
So,
match their energy depending. If they have low energy, isn't so good because we both go, but
right.
but
Yeah.
at the same time, you don't want to necessarily be high energy all the time anyway, because that can put people off as well. So it's trying to find that middle ground. But I do tend to mirror people a little bit just because that's what I naturally do anyway. But it's yeah, you still have to be yourself. You still have to have that. But yeah, building rapport takes a little.
Yeah.
I guess that's
I
practice
used
too.
I used to be very high energy or very low energy, and I thought I had a mood disorder. But I was either like doing well, and I'd come into work, I was like, "Hey guys." But then if I was depressed, I'd come into work and I was like, I hate my life. And then people were like, "Oh, Stephanie's not doing well today." But I'm better emotionally regulated now than I ever was. So I'm more high energy,
Yeah,
but not like super high energy. I'm like moderate energy now.
yeah. I think it's fairly normal to be different energy in different situations on different days. Though I think there are, I think as humans we do go through that emotional, well, not emotional, but emotion kind of shift. Depending on
Yeah.
the weather or just just had a busy week the week before or
Yeah.
whatever it is. We go through stages, I think.
Well, I was like either high or low, kind of. But now, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's yesterday was rainy and I was blah. I was like, oh, blah. And so I love the rain, but it's also when the sun's not out, there's a different energy to it. That's another thing that's very interesting about creativity is you can be creative in your high and in your low, and
Yeah,
you create different things, and that's life.
Maggie Hamling, who's another painter. Um, she talks about if you're angry, paint. If you're frustrated, paint. If you're it's just saying in all the states that you're in. I mean, she's a little bit more firm and aggressive than I am in how she explains it, but she has great attitude, that artist. But be with your work, in all states. With me, art started off as therapy, but now it's therapeutic, but it's not therapy. So it's changed as I think for a lot of people it starts off as the more of a need and a therapy, and then it shifts into a need, but it's more the tactile nature of it that therapeutic stuff. So
That's awesome. I think that's exciting to have something that you're passionate about, and it's also therapeutic, and it's also Like it gets you up in the morning. I remember always trying to find that, how do people get so excited about their life? And when you learn about passion and somebody's purpose, I think that's what we're all striving for. And that's what gets people up. That's what, when you talk about those people who, oh, well, they're in jail because they were getting involved in this and this. And, you can say what you want about them, but I'm like, if they were given a chance to find something that they knew that they were good at and passionate about, that's what we need to encourage and uplift with people, right? Instead of saying to people in jail, oh, well, you're just bad and you need to like get programs that help them find something with purpose. I think that's what really will. Well, there's a variety of things of why people do things, but I think for many people, that's.
I mean, a lot of these programs do have like a time limit on them, and if you haven't made it by then the fund gets cut and you're on your own. So I think there needs to be a bit more of like a structure to helping people in the creative arts and things. You did the narration for the audiobook yourself. You're saying that voiceover work was something that you've been practicing. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I told you I recorded it. I haven't edited it or uploaded it at all yet because I take so long to do things.
I thought it was already out, but
no. I was going to mention that I'm doing that because I just gotta get it done. When I left the bank in 2019. I decided to do voiceover. So I was learning the business and taking acting classes. And I even I went to a speech therapist to learn how to, because I can get mumbly and stuff.
Me too.
So, and I have a nice voice and people are like, oh, you're good at this. But it's a lot of practice and which is good, but I didn't love it because when you read something, you start reading it, whereas you're supposed to sound like you're saying it. And in my brain, that was very hard. Also, they said, if you're being directed by somebody for a commercial or for anything, and they're saying, okay, switch it like this and switch it like that. I was thinking, oh my goodness, my brain has a hard time switching things so quickly. And then with the editing, for every hour you record something, there's like 2 hours of editing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hate that stuff. Well, I don't hate it. Like I learned it. It's interesting, but I wouldn't enjoy doing that.
It's time consuming.
Yeah. So when I learned that really was what voiceover was, I was like, oh, that's not really my thing. But what I did enjoy was the podcasting and speaking in front of people. But because I learned so much about the audio, about speaking and stuff, I thought, why don't I just record my book? I'm very animated with kids stuff because I used to read to kids when I was in the nursery at church and with my niece and nephew. And I like to get, I like that kind of voice that gets into it. But I find it hard with adult stuff. But with kids stuff, I can get into the voice. So because you're more dramatic and I'm more dramatic. I can't just be like, I like to be high and low. So yeah, I'm working on editing that. And I thought, because I kept getting these emails or pop-ups that say, well, why don't you come to this website and find a voiceover person for your book? And I'm thinking, I can do that myself. So there you go. So, and it's really easy. I Googled how to upload it, and you basically just go through Amazon and upload it to Audible. So it's really fun.
It sounds fun. Yeah. I don't know if I could do it, but it sounds like a lot of practice needed because I'm good at mumbling. I'm good at thinking of three words at once, try and say them all at the same time. And then if I'm reading it, sometimes I'll skip a word and then that merges into the word I'm about to say. And yeah, we get into the right muddle with the ADHD mind and also just, I guess, dyslexia and all that sort of stuff. The speech occasionally lets me down. So yeah. It sounds like something that needs a lot of practice, and it sounds like you've worked on it to understand the actual skill behind it and the art of speaking when it comes to that, in that situation.
Yeah, I've learned a lot. And also there's a man named John Maxwell. He's like the #1 leadership expert. And they have this John Maxwell team where you sign up and you can learn and you can say I'm a speaker and a coach. And so I learned a lot also through them on speaking. And like when you give a speech or you're, even for pastors and sermons, this stuff is helpful. Incorporate stories and do it this way. And so I didn't learn. I didn't take all the courses because it was a bit overwhelming for me, but I learned aspects of it. And so I incorporate those things into, you pick up things here and
Yeah.
there. Okay, how to speak better. Okay. And it takes practice for sure. And I don't really have practice speaking in front of people, but the podcast has given me a lot of practice and being on podcasts. But it's not like I'm getting up there in front of people and speaking. But I was terrified of public speaking, getting up in front of people. I used to sing, but I got panicky. And so like my singing in public was terrible because my breath was so out of control because of my anxiety. And I hated it. And I was like, I hate public speaking. And I remember hearing people later on, they're like, yeah, I was terrified of that. And now I do it. And I was like, yeah, right. Now I actually enjoy when I was working at my last job. I would be, when we had to present to HR or anything, or we get in groups and present to the managers, I'd be like, oh, I'll present. And it was just so funny how much I grew since I was a kid, where I was terrified of even having people look at me or standing up or saying anything. It's exciting when you see your growth in that way.
Similar story. I was a really shy, awkward child growing up, and then through the art and through the YouTube, it's just become, yeah, I think even public speaking has been a bit easier, even though I haven't done it on stage. I've done it. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it all helps. It's all practice. I haven't done any official practice or training or anything, but just from doing it, it helps, even though sometimes I do get a little bit stumbled and as I talk more and more.
But that's what's exciting, because you're learning as like the podcast, right? You're probably feeling more comfortable as you're doing this.
It's sort of, yeah, so sometimes I feel more comfortable. Sometimes you get the awkwardness come back, and yeah, it's up and down. But I mean, we'll be in double figures soon for the episode. So yeah, I've got a few more this week, and then I've got a quiet week next week. So the more you do it, the easier it gets, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So with the book, did you market the book and the podcast? Was that part of what you were doing for both of them?
Yes, but I was in a very anxious state about that. And as I'm learning about law of attraction and stuff, it's, if you're in a place of not feeling comfortable with, you're terrified of, you're anxious about it, you're not going to want to do it. And so it kind of, that's why I listen to Abraham Hicks, and Esther Hicks talks about getting in a good feeling and enjoying the process, which I've heard from other people as well. But I was in such fear of all of that, because for the first time, putting myself out there with a podcast was terrifying. I didn't like to put myself out there. I didn't want to have pictures of me. Didn't like to be on video and all of these different things. And so I was still in that mindset also when I did the book. And it's hard to market yourself. You feel like, oh, I'm going to annoy people because I get annoyed if people post too much about the same thing. I'm like, okay, we get it, So you have to learn to kind of do a variety of things.
Yeah.
And there's just so much to learn. I'm like, oh my goodness, social media. I knew Facebook, but then Instagram kept changing, and I was like, oh, it was overwhelming. So I've learned a lot over the past few years, and I'm actually going to be taking some courses on social media marketing, like starting now. So I'm excited to learn that, because this is a new era for me, a new thing to get into, but it was terrifying, and I didn't really do too much of it because I didn't really know what I was doing. And there's a lot to learn. I mean, but they also say just be yourself, which I actually like that better, when you can be authentic rather than here's a formula and follow the formula, which is a lot of the marketing platforms or how they teach it. You got to do this and this and this. And I'm thinking, I hate doing that. I don't want to do that. But then if you're authentic about it and you're like, I'm going to do it my way or this way, that's more real. And I appreciate that side of it better.
Because that's why I asked you to lead into a question I ask all my guests, and that is, for anyone who is putting themselves out there for the first time or is getting a bit disillusioned with it, what advice would you give them in terms of mindset, in terms of kind of what you've just said, really, if you want to add, expand on that? And
I would say, well, I had my life coach, Randy Spelling. He goes, because I say, oh, I don't want to do social media. And he goes, well, ask yourself why, what purpose do you want to do with it? Like, do you feel like you have to do it? Or do you have something to share and give that you want to maybe help others? So if I have that mindset of helping others, it gets easier, because I'm like, oh, I'm just sharing what I've learned, right? Rather than, oh, I got to post, I got to say something. And the mindset is huge when if you can start to say, I enjoy this, or this is going to be fun, rather than I have to, and this is what I'm supposed to do, that gets you in a much better place. But also for me, and I think most people, is just be yourself. A lot of us are just tired of the fakeness. We want to see people being real, and we want to see the scars and the things of real people. We're tired of the airbrushed stuff. We're tired of all of that. And it's harmful when you see so many people think that that is the level to attain to, and they don't look like that, or they're not talking like this. I would say start small, because it can be very overwhelming, but do it when you feel good about it, and then just be yourself.
Yeah. I think for me, it's figuring out what does it mean to be myself when I'm on camera, because
Right.
I've never had a camera pointed at me before. So it's like, I know how to be myself, but what does it mean? As soon as the camera's pointed at me, I'm not myself anymore. So what's that about? So that took me a little while to figure out, who am I on camera? Who am I on a podcast? So there are different situations where I had to really unpack that and figure that out. So I found that quite interesting, because people go, be yourself. So yeah, but I've never had a camera pointed at me this close before. I don't know what that means.
And you're hyper aware of the camera, because now you're thinking, as soon as you're like record, camera's on me, right?
Yeah,
I feel the
use all
same way.
words. You end up acting like silly, and you go, well, I'm acting. I mean, yeah, I have a sense of humor, but that's not me. So,
Oh yeah, I
or
felt
vice
that
versa.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, before
Ultra
you do it, you
serious.
just get
Yeah,
used to it, right?
yeah,
Like,
you do. Yeah,
yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, I always thought, and also you see other people think, well, my first time, oh, I'm not perfect at it, but those people are. And it's like, it takes time to learn a new skill.
yeah,
We're all going to mess up at the beginning. It's going to be terrible, and that's okay.
exactly. You've got to get through all of that to get to the good stuff,
Yeah.
and I assume everyone learns at like a different pace. So those who've learned it in 5 years, you may take 6 or 7. That's fine.
Yeah. That's why I like that, when we just talk about everyone's different, and we all have different struggles, and we might learn them different times in different ways, and it might take somebody longer than it takes somebody else, and stop putting everyone in the same boxes. And that's exciting. It also gives you more compassion and empathy for people, because you understand, well, just because I did it, they're in a different place
Yeah, and there's going to be things that they can do better and quicker than you, and vice versa. So
Exactly.
you can use other people's strengths. Yeah, you can get to learn from other people for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, this has been absolutely wonderful having you on the podcast, and we went off
Oh,
on
it's been
our
fun.
tangents, and which has been great, because they're all related to the human experience, which is kind of what creativity is celebrating, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, well, I appreciate what you're doing. You're showcasing people and their creativity and how they express themselves. And I mean, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I know you, and to be asked to be on your podcast was very, very thrilling, and I'm honored to be on here. So thank you so much.
Yeah. So before we go, where can people find you? Where's the best place for people to get in touch? Or
Oh
I
yeah.
know you've got your link tree of all your things on there. Where's the best place?
I'm on Instagram at Stephanie Ann Webb, and Facebook as well. I wrote the book under Stephanie Webb, but I didn't
Yeah.
know at the time that when I went to get a website, there was a Stephanie Webb taken, so I had to go with my middle name. So if I write another book, I'll put Stephanie Ann Webb. Where else? Oh, my website is stephanieannwebb.com. And
Yeah, I mean, I'll put all of the things in the description, and they'll be popping up on the screen as we talk. So
oh, okay.
they'll all be there.
I'm always like,
All the
where am I? I'm
things.
also on Twitter, but I barely go on there. I don't like Twitter. Uh,
I use it for
there's a
just
lot of
sharing news and things, nothing much. But
yeah. I mean, they say I remember some people go on all of the social media platforms, but it's overwhelming. And I mostly used to Facebook and Instagram, so I don't really get on TikTok or Twitter.
yeah, I've lost my ideas when it comes to TikTok, and then short form. I've been focusing more on YouTube, but you can't save it easily on YouTube. But then if you save on TikTok, you have the watermark, and it's just it's
Oh my goodness.
just like
See,
I want one platform to do it all rather than Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. Like,
It's too much. And
just
actually, I
be
heard,
yourself. Social medias,
yeah, and I heard that in marketing. For true marketing, they say just focus on one or two platforms.
yeah,
Don't try to go on all of them at once. And so
yeah.
I was like, oh, thank God. I don't want to go on all of them.
No, it was much easier when Snapchat was Snapchat, stories was stories, and Instagram was Instagram with photos. Now they're all trying to be the same thing. So yeah, that's
Mm.
kind of a yeah shows what it means to be yourself. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But
And if it
yeah,
doesn't feel right, then don't go on it.
yeah, exactly.
Right? Like you don't have to.
Play to your strengths, find out what works and what you enjoy, and one or two is good. I mean, Instagram I still do because I only use the photo element of it, and that's not too much headspace for me. I don't use the rest of it really. I do a
Right.
reel very occasionally. Usually I put it on TikTok, save it because it's the easiest to save on, and then put it on all the others and hope for the best. Um,
I can't imagine the storage in everyone's phones when they have all of these apps.
yeah, I mean,
Oh
since
my gosh.
YouTube, my external hard drive is just I've got like a whole graveyard of them now. So must actually organize that at some point.
Yeah, fun times.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much,
thank
Chris. This
you.
was fun.
So yeah, thanks for listening, everyone who's been listening at home or watching on YouTube if you're on YouTube. And yeah, like I say at the end of everyone, keep scribbling, keep writing, do what you need to do, and let's get over that perfectionism and get through to the other ideas because they will happen. So thank you. And so it's bye from me and it's bye from Stephanie.
Bye.
Hey.